Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Darren. In today's video, I just want to talk a little bit about something that people have been asking me, and I want to make a video basically comparing and contrasting the three specs we have for rogues in Legion. And basically the premise is, hey Darren, it's a question I'm being asked often, hey, which spec do you think will be best at 1v1s? A lot of people speculate that 1v1s mean duels, but a lot of people actually mean 1v1s as in like in any PvP situation. Some of the examples are, let's say you're doing a 2v2, your partner gets knocked, the other partner gets knocked on the enemy team, and now you gotta verse the other player. Which spec should you be playing in order to be able to come out on top? Maybe you do something like what I used to do, or some other rogues like to do, is go in BGs and pick off one target and have 1v1s or 1v2s, which rogue spec can basically roam and solo. So basically we are talking about which spec rogue can best 1v1, but we are expanding into more situations other than just straight up duels. So I'm going to be taking a look at all three specs of rogue, and I'm going to be giving you guys as much of a objective opinion on this as possible. We're basically going to take a look at all the specs, everything they bring, and analyze which one is the best, and I'll give you guys some of the reasoning I have behind it. If you guys have any thoughts or ideas about this video, and if you have any thoughts about which spec of rogue is the best, feel free to comment down below. Start a conversation with everybody else watching the video. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions on it, but let's get to the video and figure out which spec of rogue is probably the best for 1v1 in PvP. I think we can get the easy one out of the way, and I don't want to make this video sound like a discouraging video. I'm really just trying to showcase you guys some of the best, I guess, ideas of what I think, which spec of rogue will be the best for 1v1 in PvP situations. And off the bat, I have to say Assassination is probably not one of them, simply because Assassination doesn't have the same tools Outlaw Rogue does or Subtlety Rogue does. Let's take a look at what everything Assassination Rogue brings. It brings, first of all, a lot of damage, and in some cases you can basically just truck your opponent down with that amount of damage. You have bleeds, you have poisons, you have so many ways of going through armor against armor-based classes, and Calathis, it's really difficult to escape you once you get your dots on them. And the mobility section for Assassination isn't really subpar either. You have Shadow Step and you have Sprint, which I feel like are some of the best mobility-based abilities. But then when you take a look at the rest of the spec, the artifact talents, PvP talents, and class talents, you will see that the spec doesn't really have too much survivability. Let me list you some of the things you have for survivability. So your toolkit is Cloak and Evasion. Both of them are on the same cooldown, and you have a 2-minute vanish. You also have Crimson Vial, which again you should remember it is reduced by 50% when encountering PvP situations. So what else does Assassination Rogue have outside of that? You have Leech and Poison as a talent, but it is such a terrible talent compared to the other talents in the tree. So while 10% Leech would be nice, I don't really see any practical use for it. So already that's all you really have for defensive value on the class talents. On the PvP talents, you don't really have too much defensive value either, because for the most part your PvP talents are laid out to be damage buffs left and right. And that's basically what Assassination brings. It brings a lot of damage. But for the most part, as Assassination, you're almost forced to kind of like face roll into your opponent, dot them up, and train them down. When you take a look at the artifact talent tree, one of the talents you have is Fade into Shadows, which at 3 ranks, which is the max ranks, reduces the cooldown of Cloak with Shadows by 10 seconds. So you do have a 10-second faster cooldown on Cloak, but I don't think that 10 seconds is going to be a make it or break it type of buff for PvP. You also have Shadow Swiftness, which is another talent which only has 1 rank for it in your artifact tree. Activating Shadow Step grants you evasion for 2 seconds. Now with 10-second cooldown reduction on Cloak and 2 seconds of evasion on Shadow Step, I don't think it's enough of a toolkit to be able to give you that much survivability. For the most part with Shadow Swiftness, where you activate Shadow Step for evasion, it'll grant you ability to dodge maybe like 1 critical spell for a very short moment. I don't feel like it's enough to be a defensive, it's more like of a clutch ability. You would use the Shadow Step to get the evasion buff in order to be able to live just a little bit longer to see your enemy fall down from the dots. But for the most part, you don't really have too much survivability as an Assassination Rogue. And one of the things that is crucial in 1v1 situations is being able to outlive your opponent or have some means of survivability against your foe. And this is just talking about 1v1 situations, we're not even talking about 2v1 situations. I'm not making this video, and I'm also not taking a look at Assassination and telling you, hey, don't play Assassination for 1v1 situations. Feel free to play Assassination, and for the most part, most of you guys that are going to be playing Assassination will already know from the fact that from the get-go that you are meant to be a damage dealer, but that's really as far as it goes for you. You have a ton of damage, you have a ton of versatility in terms of damage, you have amazing bursts, probably one of the fastest bursts I've ever seen, some of the most dedicated damage in the game to be able to literally sit on a healer and truck them down. But for the most part in survivability, that is not something Assassination specializes in. I'm not saying you shouldn't play it, but if you are looking for a rogue spec best for roaming, I really doubt Assassination is going to be your first pick. Now let's take a look at the second spec on the list that I have here, Outlaw Rogue. Let's see if it is the best spec in the game. Can it be probably one of the best 1v1, 2v1 roaming situation PvP rogue specs? And I feel like it has a pretty decent chance at it. With all the changes that happened in Legion going from combat to Outlaw, Outlaw Rogue have some of the best CC I've seen in the game. They have a little bit of range to them as well, a little bit of pseudo range. They have some of the most interesting survivability and self-heal mechanics that I feel like are great for big BG situations. In some cases, you're even considered literally a live lord if you use your abilities properly. Let's take a look at everything Outlaw Rogue brings, and we can start with the class downs already. We have Grapple and Hook, which is an ability for mobility, which can get you in and out of a bad situation when you need it. So already you already have a little bit of mobility in order to help you move around the battlefield, whether you are winning or losing in the situation. You have Iron Stomach, which allows you to heal yourself for a little bit more, increasing the healing you receive from Crimson Vial, healing potions, and health stones by 30%, allowing you to be able to 1v1 most classes as long as you carry extra potions with you. You also have the talent of Dirty Tricks, allowing you to use Blind, Cheap Shot, and Sap, and Gouge without having to use energy on all your CC, allowing you to use CC whenever you need it. And one of the best ways to control a fight, 1v1, 2v1, is to be able to have crowd control on one foe or two foes and be able to control the battlefield. Let's say your opponent's popping cooldowns, you can literally stop them from doing so. Let's say your opponent's trying to score a heal and you don't have kick, you can gouge your opponent so you can control where the battle goes. When we take a look at the PvP talents, we have two particular talents that I noted. We have Drink Up Me Hearties, which is basically a hellstone that our Outlaw Rogue can give. You learn the ability to create Crimson Vials for your allies, and the ability basically reads create a Crimson Vial to share with your allies. Maximum of 3 can be carried at once. They function just like a Crimson Vial will. So technically you can stack together 2 Crimson Vials, one that you would make and one as your ability, with Iron Stomach as well as a Health Stone and a Healing Potion in order to give yourself maximum potential for healing. So on paper, Outlaw has a lot of tricks up his sleeve, especially in terms of healing. So technically it is possible for you to have insane amount of healing in order to be able to outmatch 2 targets bursting on you at the same time. You also have a talent of Plunder Armor, which I find to be one of my favorite talents in the game. With Plunder Armor, you select an opponent and you basically reduce their damage by 20% and their health by 20%, while increasing your damage by 20%, your health by 20%, and stealing their looks. So this way you can literally nerf someone's health and damage while boosting your health and your damage. I can already see people using Plunder Armor specifically in 2v1 situations, especially when they're having to deal with 2 different bursts from 2 different classes. So being able to Plunder Armor one of them in order to reduce that burst while giving you a little bit extra oomph to be able to finish off one opponent is definitely going to be helpful. Now, this is already pretty insane from Outlaw. We took a look at the class talents and PvP talents, and we saw just how much of utility it had compared to, let's say, Assassination Rogue, but it doesn't really stop there. We also have artifact talents to take a look at. One of them is Ghostly Shell, which is a 3 rank artifact talent, and at max rank at level 3, Dread Blades will heal you for 6% of maximum health for each effect cleared by Cloak of Shadows or resisted during the duration. So let's say you have literally every single dot in the game on you and you're dropping. Once you cloak, it will remove every single magical effect and heal you for 6% of health per magical effect removed. Also, while Cloak is available, every spell that hits you while Cloak is up will heal you for 6% of your health. So I've been in a situation before where a Fire Mage literally dropped Meteor on the ground and I cloaked and stewed in the Meteor after effect literally to heal myself to full. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done, one of the craziest abilities to have Cloak heal you off of magical effects, and it just works well together because you are going to be cloaking magical effects. So it's just such a convenience boost. Another trait we have, which is one of your major traits, is called Creed, and it reads this: Run Through occasionally awakens Dread Blades, unleashing a sweeping attack against all nearby enemies for a certain amount of physical damage and healing you per target. This effect can be seen in multiple of my videos where you have this blue mist come out of the Dread Blades just for a quick moment, and for every person that it hits, it'll heal you for a certain amount, which is insane in Battlegrounds. Imagine a Death Knight who is just popping army and you keep using run through and you heal off of every single pet. There's literally nothing an Unholy Death Knight can do if your procs are happening. So already we have so much utility and so much availability for healing capability as an Outlaw Rogue. And for the longest time, you know, if you played a combat rogue before, you always read that flavor text that says the swashbuckler who stands toe to toe with their enemy. Well, now it feels like combat rogue, you know, couldn't really stand toe to toe as well as some of the other classes, but Outlaw can definitely stand toe to toe with majority of the classes. But I guess the main question is Outlaw literally the best self-sustaining 1v1, 1v2 roaming PvP spec in the game? We can't really answer it until we take a look at the final spec. The next and last rogue spec we'll be talking about is the Subtlety rogue. Now, this spec has gone through a very interesting transition from Warlord Regenerate into Legion. So there's going to be a lot of concepts to talk about for a Subtlety rogue. Even like a transition of combat to Outlaw, you don't really have too many ability changes that I need to go into depth with Subtlety, and you will see what I'm talking about. But let's get to the overview. Can this spec be a really good roaming spec? Off the bat, with the class talents, you don't really see too much in terms of survivability, but one talent in particular, Soothing Darkness. If any of you remember Second Wind, this is basically Second Wind to Subtlety rogues. So if any of you played during Pandaria, you will know just how good Second Wind was. This is Second Wind that's active while stealth is available. That also accounts for Shadow Dance, so as long as Shadow Dance is available, you're healing for 3% of maximum health every 1 second. This talent alone allows a Subtlety rogue, the longer they are in stealth or in Shadow Dance, to heal for an insane amount of health. And this health and this healing isn't reduced in PvP at all. They did reduce the healing of Crimson Vial, but as far as I am to understand, Soothing Darkness still heals for its full percentages, as I've seen so many clutch wins from Subtlety rogues in arenas and BGs simply living off of Soothing Darkness. When we take a look at the PvP talents, you don't really have too much in terms of direct survivability. One of them I want to talk about is Shadow's Caress, which says while in stealth, the cooldown recovery of all your abilities is increased by 30%. This basically feeds into a little bit of CC. That means like you can blind players a lot more often, but also allows you recharges of Shadow Dance, which Shadow Dance is on 3 charges. All of them by default are about 3 seconds. Shadow's Caress allows you to get those charges just a little bit faster, so you can stay in this healing stealth state a lot longer. The next talent on the PvP talents is Phantom Assassin, which increases the duration of your Shadow Dance by 3 extra seconds, and you automatically gain Symbols of Death, which doesn't really help in the health spectrum, but basically allows you to stay in Shadow Dance for 3 seconds longer. Actually, if you go back to the class talents, you can add Subterfuge in there that will increase your Shadow Dance by 2 extra seconds. So 3 seconds default, 2 extra seconds from Subterfuge making 5 seconds, 3 extra seconds from Phantom Assassin gives you 8 seconds, every second taking for 3% of your health every time you are in Shadow Dance. And this is insane, just the amount of healing you can get out of it. And I feel like that's kind of like the spearhead for Subtlety, is just the amount of raw healing you get while you're using Shadow Dance, which is you're using it for either CC, lighting a burst, or dealing damage. When we take a look at the artifact weapon for Subtlety, you have a few different traits, and one of them being Cat-like Reflexes, which is a 3 rank trait, increases dodge chance by 15% once you are fully ranked up. Next one is Ghostly Armor, which increases your chance to dodge by 10 increased percent. So together your chance to dodge increased by 10%, and your dodge chance increased by 15, giving you 25% dodge chance against melee. On top of it, you also have Flickering Shadows, which says activate Sprint and then not taking damage and dealing no damage for 3 seconds will activate Vanish. So you can escape fights using Sprint, you can escape fights using Vanish, and one of the best ways to avoid confrontation or getting yourself a little bit extra backup for yourself, a little bit extra also healing while you're in stealth, is to simply escape out of a fight. And I have 2 ways of doing it. Another talent trait which fits into the stealth topic is Embrace Darkness, which is just a 1 rank trait. When you enter stealth, you gain a shield which absorbs damage equal to your attack power. So every time you go into stealth, as also added, every time you enter Shadow Dance, you get an absorb equal to your attack power. So not only are you healing for 3% every single second, not only do you have Crimson Vial, not only can you escape fights with Sprint and Vanish to just escape and just vanish out of the situation, you also get yourself a little bit extra of a shield so you can stay in the fight. one of the things as Subtlety Rogue, you don't really have to play gimmicky in order to have healing. While as an Outlaw Rogue, you do have to find certain specific situations. As a Subtlety Rogue, basically doing what you normally do allows you to heal. So it's basically almost like a combat heal, or that's how I like to think of it, almost like a combat heal within the game. On top of it, everybody who plays Subtlety knows that you have insane mobility using Shadow Strike. Shadow Strike is a 15-yard range ability. Well, it used to be 25 now, but now it's 15. It teleports you directly to your opponent. So this makes it even harder for you to be able to kite a Subtlety Rogue. So there's less chances for Subtlety Rogue to be pelted by a hunter or a mage, or frost mage, warlock, shadow priest from miles away where you can't reach them. Instead, you can take the fight to them while healing yourself, while stun locking the target and literally wreaking havoc on them. And if you are gonna ask me, well, does Shadow Strike work against melee as well? Shadow Strike teleports you behind your target. So in some cases, you can kind of use LOS in order to just not take hits. On top of it, add your 10% dodge chance increase plus 50% dodge chance increase for overall 25% chance to dodge melee attacks. It is kind of crazy, kind of weird, but kind of awesome. So I guess we're finally coming down to this. It's coming down to the nail, guys. Which spec is the best for roaming, in my personal opinion? We've taken a look at Assassination, Subtlety, and Outlaw, but which one is probably the best for 1v1 situations in arenas, BGs, and duels? The answer is simple. I have to go with Subtlety. Subtlety simply has just so much more convenience in terms of self-heals, in terms of defensives. Subtlety has all the same things every other rogue has. You have Cloak, you have Evasion, you have Vanish, albeit a faster Vanish. On top of it, you have almost constant 3% health regeneration as long as you are in Stealth or in Shadow Dance, which is basically every time you're PvPing, you are either in Stealth or in Shadow Dance. You also have on-demand CC in order to be able to lock down an opponent to stop burst, so you have that at your convenience. And basically, you don't have to go out of your way like sometimes you would have to with an Outlaw Rogue to stand in a magical effect just to get a heal. You don't have to rely on an RNG of a trait for greed on run through in order to give you a little bit of healing. You don't have to spec out of Control is King for PvP as an Outlaw Rogue just to grab yourself an extra healing file. You basically can just talent yourself all into damage, and while you're dealing damage, you get amazing healing, and as long as you CC, as long as you deal damage, you are passively healing yourself at all times. So I have to give it to Subtlety. It probably has the easiest playstyle because you don't have to change a single thing for you to be able to heal yourself a little bit better. Basically, the more offensive you are as a Subtlety Rogue, the more defensive you can play, and basically allows you to be able to take on bigger challenges, get a lot more opportunities for yourself in order to be able to capture epic moments in PvP. And that's literally exactly why I'm going with Subtlety Rogue. You simply don't have to change your playstyle, as you are given the tools needed in order to be able to succeed without having to play up to a gimmick. And I feel like that's probably the best and the most practical thing you can get yourself for World of Warcraft PvP. But let me know in the comments below how you guys feel. Does this change your mind at all? If you were wondering which spec of Rogue you want to play, what spec are you going to be playing after this video? Are you a fan of roaming in 1v1 and 2v1 situations? Let me know in the comments below your guys' thoughts and opinions. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. My name is Dalaran, and I'll see you guys in the next video.